The one champion whose age we're constantly reminded of wins the amount of games her age. Now, I do have a lot more to say about this, and hopefully for me, there isn't another super champion I have to keep track of. So tune in for part 2, where we take a look at the aftermath of Mattea Roach's loss. Whomever the next champion will be, and whenever that will be, we'll just have to see. Well, looks like we got our question answered a lot sooner than any of us imagined. But technically, the first champion was Christine Welchel. Before I actually start talking about Mattea, I have to go over what she could have suffered. The 4-day curse. Just some background information. Before Mattea started playing on Jeopardy, there was an impressive wave of 4-day winners, 3 of which were back-to-back. Christine Welchel, Margaret Shelton, and Maureen O'Neill. Then Jackie Kelly went through the 4-day curse the week after Maureen lost. Jackie had so much potential to win a few more games. She won $54,800 in her 4th game, which is impressive. The way I see it, 4 wins gives a good chance to appear in the Tournament of Champions. 5 wins is said to secure and solidify her spot, and that's why I say Christine was technically the next champion. After Mattea won 5 games, Ken mentioned in the next preamble that he thought Mattea might have lost after 4 wins. Any fear that was dispelled soon after. 4 wins as a contestant is an amazing achievement. It's huge. But, in recent weeks, so many of our contestants lost in their 5th game. It happened 4 times. That I was starting to wonder if we had a kind of a 4-game curse going on here. Thankfully, any fear that was dispelled yesterday when our champion, Mattea Roach, secured her 5th win and a spot in the next Tournament of Champions. While Mattea seemed to have broken the curse, she could have lost at different points in her run, including in her 5th game. And that's where things become really interesting. In her 1st game, it was basically a competition between her and Kathleen. Both their scores were so close at the end of Double Jeopardy, and both answered Final Jeopardy correctly. Mattea could have lost in her 3rd game. Mattea was in the lead at $16,400, and Reagan White was in 2nd place at $11,600. Mattea was in 2nd place after she answered wrong. If Reagan only bet $2,000, she could have won that game by $1, and we wouldn't have had to hear about Mattea again, which is actually crazy when you think about it. On her 5th game, it was Michael who was in the lead at the end of Double Jeopardy. Mattea wagered $2,400, which put her at $12,600, risking a tie between her and Michael. If Michael hadn't risked anything, the game would have ended in a tie, and they'd have to answer the tiebreaker question. Sure, either contestant would have had a chance to buzz in first. What this also means is, if Mattea did lose by risking a tie, the 4-day curse would have continued. Since Christine's reign began because of a tie, it would have been funny to see the 4-day curse come full circle if Mattea lost because of the tiebreaker. In her 10th game, fellow Canadian contestant Caitlin Hayes was the only one to answer correctly. Unfortunately, she was in 3rd place by the end of Double Jeopardy. If she bet at least $9,000, she would have been the winner, and we wouldn't see Mattea again until the Tournament of Champions. I guess she was relying on Mattea over betting, and that's why Caitlin didn't bet any higher. Still could have gone all in, though. Mattea survived 3 scares in a row, one of which had the potential to end in a tie also. That rhymes. Double Jeopardy was highly competitive between Ben and Mattea. Unfortunately, Ben tried buzzing in many times in the previous round and ended in 3rd place. This was also Mattea's highest wager on a daily double by wagering $8,000. If neither of those factors were a problem, Ben would have had a higher chance of winning. He was dominant. I had also stopped rooting for Mattea at this point. Then we get to the infamous penultimate game. Sarah was Mattea's biggest challenger, and only lost because she never watched Citizen Kane.
I've never seen Citizen Kane.
Actually, now that I read that out loud, I remember there was a player, I want to say it was in Jackie Kelly's run. He played, I think it was called Pre-Final Jeopardy, where he and his family would guess what the answer would be before the question even comes up. So if Sarah, and they'd get it right most of the time, and if Sarah used that method by thinking of the answer before the question even came up, if she just wrote that down, she could have won also, I guess. Yeah. One thing I didn't comment on before is this is the 2nd game in a row when there was a contestant who was in the red at the end of Double Jeopardy. It's been happening a lot this season, except I don't recall it happening in 2 games in a row. I wonder how TJ would have reacted to Sarah losing at Final Jeopardy. So as you can see, as successful as Mattea was, these games were won by luck. As I mentioned, I stopped rooting for Mattea by her 17th game. I think it was mostly because I noticed fans comparing her to Matt and Amy and hoping to see the three of them as finalists in the Tournament of Champions. This was also when I noticed how little credit Jonathan Fisher and Andrew He are given anymore. Sometime after Mattea beat Jonathan's record, everyone slowly forgot he defeated Mattea and went on to win a streak of his own. Meanwhile, no one seems to remember Andrew He. He won $52,001 in a single game and over $100,000 in 3 days. Personally, I was hoping to see Matt, Jonathan, and Amy as finalists, or maybe even Matt, Andrew, and Amy as finalists. Either way would be a rematch. I think it was her 14th game when I started noticing this, and found myself rooting against her. My original disappointment came from the number of times Mattea, Jonathan Fisher, and Amy Schneider were named in different articles. Then my disappointment came from how well the runners-up played, only to lose against Mattea. The other champions had so much potential. My favorite players weren't even the ones who came close to defeating her. It was actually either Rachel Skit or Anna Meyer, which is even funnier because they have like opposite personalities, from what it seems like at least. My third disappointment was she went through the extremely rare phenomenon of playing a single Final Jeopardy round. It wasn't until as I was editing the video, reviewing her 12th game, that I found it quite disturbing to take that in. She was only 23. She's the only player born after the Trebek era to play a single Final Jeopardy round. At least if this happened under Amy Schneider or even Mattea, I wouldn't really think much of it. My fourth disappointment was what I noted Ken mentioning throughout her run. 23-year-old Mattea Roach. Ken's introduction was, by the age of 23, and I doubt there's a 23-year-old in the world who isn't impressed by that. I'll tell you what, this 47-year-old certainly is. With 17 wins under the belt of our 23-year-old champion Mattea Roach, we've had some amazing champions this season, and at just 23, Mattea is playing in the ballpark of any of them. Our 23-year-old Mattea Roach hurdled another milestone yesterday, tying Julia Collins for 5th all-time in consecutive games won on Jeopardy. Once again, Ken brought up her age. I still don't see why. Just because I know that Ken's gonna make it about Mattea's age if she wins 23 games, I'm secretly hoping she loses tonight. Surprising no one more than Mattea herself. Once again, he made it about her age, which is why I secretly hoped she'd lose the previous game. We were reminded of her age so many times. Just Mattea winning as much as she did was impressive. Of course it was. I'm just asking, how many times do we need to be reminded of it? One of the first times it came up was in her 16th game, and I immediately brought up Matt Jackson. While Mattea Roach is in 5th place for most games won, yes, at the age of 23, Matt Jackson came in 4th place for most games won, also at the age of 23 in 2015. I didn't remember this at the time. It's crazy to think about how we went from 4th place at 13 wins to 5th place at 23 wins. Toward the end of April, I was wondering, what if in a year or two, there's a 22-year-old champion who wins 17 games? Will this champion's age be the subject of every victory and preamble? Mattea also remains as the only champion who won the number of games her age. The one champion whose age we're constantly reminded of wins the amount of games her age. James Holzhauer came close as he won 32 games when he was 34, and Amy Schneider won 40 games at age 42. Both were off by just 2 numbers, which is one of the coincidences of James Holzhauer and Amy Schneider losing. One last comment about the numbers, because I didn't notice this until recently. Whether Mattea lost in her 22nd game or 23rd game, the number would be coincidental. Obviously, there's 23 being the age and number of games she won. Since Ken mentioned Mattea was in 5th place in most games won and most money won on the 5th day of the 5th month, her streak ending at 22 wins would have also meant she lost in the 22nd year of the 21st century, 5-5-2-2. 5th most games won, 5th place for most money won, 22 games won, May 5th, 2022. Overall, Mattea was a good player, and I loved watching her play, in fact. And I loved watching her performance. I loved her side comments. I loved her quirkiness and personality. And I enjoyed listening to her interviews. I see so much of myself in Mattea that it only gets funnier when I was basically able to play along with her. I was able to answer the daily doubles when she got them, and the categories seemed significantly easier for me throughout her run. Since I've been seeing so much of myself in her, and just the fact that I never had that much faith in myself, I think that's also why I was rooting against her. Before Mattea, I thought I presented myself similarly to Mattea Roach or Jennifer Morrow. Only days after Mattea Roach lost, I predicted there'd be one last Super Champion in Season 38. Unfortunately, I'm producing this video after Ryan lost, so I have no evidence of actually saying this before it happened. Looking back, I don't think I gave Mattea the credit she deserves, and I regret that. I would often say the daily doubles were easy or the categories were easy. As much fun as I had playing along when she answered the questions, it was also hard not to point out that I knew them too. Mattea is a great player, and although she didn't give herself enough credit throughout her run, saying Matt and Amy would kick her butt in the Tournament of Champions, I still have to give her credit. Mattea would probably kick my butt in Jeopardy, and I mean that. If I ever played against her, it would probably be another Ben or Julian situation, or God forbid a Sarah incident. I noticed I didn't sound as positive toward Mattea as I did Matt, Jonathan, Andrew, and Amy, and I wanted to conclude this video by saying how fantastic Mattea played. Also, something important I left out. The final Jeopardy question on her 20th game actually came up on her 12th game as one of the questions on her 12th game. I actually forgot to post it on when I reviewed Mattea Roach's 20th game, and I forgot to add it in the final production, so yeah, I just wanted to make sure I included that. One important comment from Ken Jennings that occurred to me months later was the final Jeopardy categories being randomly selected. On Mattea's 21st game, and the game she lost, Ken informed the winners that the clues are written months in advance and are just randomly selected. For the most part, that's true until you get to Amy Schneider's 40th game. The final Jeopardy category was Sea Life, which was selected deliberately because Sea Life and Sea Life were categories in the first two rounds. Sea Life. That's kind of funny. See what they did there. Sea Life again. I see what they did there. The final Jeopardy category was Sea Life again. I've never seen that before, where the final Jeopardy category was based on two previous ones in the first round and in Double Jeopardy. As her games were coming to an end, Mattea posted on Twitter that she wanted a blue check mark, to the tune of green light. I'm waiting for it. That blue check. I want it. I don't see the big deal in Twitter verifications. Maybe it's just because I'm not big into social media. Mattea being in the younger generation, I guess it makes sense. I also don't know what the rules are for blue check marks, or even if there are. I guess they have no rules. They have no rules on their site. They have no rules. I guess I decided to include another song reference for Mattea. Congratulations to Mattea. She was a great champion, and I know she'll be fun to watch in the Tournament of Champions. And as always, thank you for watching.